In this video, we are going to talk about pulling repositories from GitHub, but also pushing repositories from GitHub, or more generally, the idea of connecting to GitHub. So if you click on that link, that will take you to the very useful book by Jenny Bryan that I have been talking about a lot. There is a chapter called Connect to GitHub. This is probably the best walkthrough that you can follow. I'm gonna do my own version here, but I think it's not gonna be all that different. There is many ways where to connect to GitHub. Mostly at this point, what is important to know is that your connection to GitHub works. It's not necessarily about what we do now that I'm going to show. It's more that what we do works. So if you go to github.com, right, you will see a little plus button there, or a green big button called New. GitHub specializes in big green buttons that tell you, hey, do this. So you click there and you'll be dropped in a page where you can create a new repository. Think of a new repository as a type of folder with special powers like to travel back in time and things like that. So here I am logged in as Mauro Lepore, so this is my account because I am a member of other organizations, for example 2 Degrees Investing, that appears here as an option. So you can add a new repository to that organization or straight into your user account. This is a demo, so I'm gonna do that in my user account. ABC could be just any random name for this demo repo that I'm about to create. I want to create this repository on GitHub and then bring it to my computer to see if that connection from GitHub to my computer works. Maybe in the description I could type something optional like demo. I'm gonna leave it public, and I'm gonna initialize this repository with a file instead of being fully empty, full empty if that exists. Instead of being completely empty, it's going to have a file called readme and nothing else. I think I'm good to go. I'm going to click the next big green button that says create repository, and this is what a repository looks like. So that file called readme is being read automatically by GitHub. The name readme is special for GitHub, so whenever there is such a file with the name readme, GitHub will basically turn that into a web page. So you see how the name of the repository became a first level heading, and the word demo is here underneath. I can show you the raw, or we're going to click here on the pen to edit that file, but we'll do it in a moment. So for now, I think I could just click on the name of the file to show you what the contents of the file actually are. What you see here is not the contents raw, are the contents after they have been rendered as if it was an HTML file. So I'm going to click on raw to show you the underlying code. The underlying code is a pound symbol, which gives that formatting as the first level heading, and then the word ABC and under it demo. So this is what the raw file looks like. I'm going to go back. The point here is that we have a repository on GitHub, so we want to get it into our computers. How do we do that? One way is to click here on the name of the repo. That is a link that will take you to the home page of the repo. You may start memorizing the format of the URLs. Basically, it is github.com, and then who is the owner of this repository, and then what is the name of that repository. On the front page here, now you see again a big green button that says click me. And if you click here in the drop-down menu, you will see that there is options to clone. Clone is this idea of downloading the entire repository into your computer. So there is tabs here, maybe you see here HTTPS, but the one that you want to use is SSH for, or most generally. In organizations like 2 Degrees, for example, we enforce communication to GitHub via SSH. So that's the one that will work for you if you have already set SSH keys, which I showed in the previous video. So now we can copy that, clicking here on the copy icon, and now it's time to go to your computer. So you could do this in a number of ways. You could, if you work with a terminal, you could type git clone and then paste that URL. So this would do the trick for you. Or in our studio, you can go to this, you can create a new project here. So you can click there, new project, and you can click here now in version control. Right now you click on Git, and you paste there the URL that you got from GitHub. So that will do the trick. I'm gonna choose here a different directory, for example my temp directory. I'm gonna set it up so that that repository is gonna be cloned into that temp folder. That's all. I click create project, and now I'm asked to enter a password that I have for the SSH key. It's optional, so you may not have a password there, and that would just work straight without that prompt. And there we are. Now you can see that the name of the project changed to ABC, and this is the file readme.md with the content that we saw. So that's fine. So that communication from GitHub to my computer seems to work. Now let's see the content of this repo here in the Git tab. I'm going to refresh this. It looks like this repository, when it was downloaded, it was added a new file called gitignore. It's not important to know what it does right now, but what it is important, and also a project file. So this file called abc.rbrush. So these two files are new to this repository. So we're going to actually add them to this repository. They exist in the folder, but they haven't been added to the actual Git repository. What is the actual Git repository? Let me show you here. So if I click here on the wheel and go to hidden files, you can see there is a folder called .git. So the Git repository, it is simply a folder with super special powers. So the way you move things into that hidden folder, I'm going to hide that now again, clicking here on do not show hidden files. The way to move files in there so that they are tracked by Git, and then you can use the superpowers that Git gives you, like for example traveling back in time. To add that, you cannot move the files manually. You have to just type some Git commands or work with Git from a GUI like RStudio. For example, the way I would add these two files to the repository is clicking on the name of those files. Those files have been now what's called added to a staging area. You can think of add a file to a staging area. It could be similar to the analogy of asking people to stand up on a stage, and you are getting ready to take a snapshot of them, but you have not yet taken the snapshot. You only have those people standing on that stage. If you want to ask them to get off the stage, you can unclick there, so Git will not, or if you take the snapshot now, it will be an empty stage, right? So you couldn't add those files. So again, add the files to the stage first, and then take the snapshot. The way you take a snapshot is with commit. So you create a commit. So you commit to add those files to the Git repository. It gives you an indication of what things are being added. It looks like it's probably a little more like the content. Sorry, actually the contents of the file that we preview here. And if I click on abc.rbrush, there is the contents of that file. We see these two files that we're going to add, and we need to now type some message like add auto-generated files. And you just, once you have a message, then you click commit. So that is what actually moves those files into that .git folder in such a way that you can leverage the powers of Git later on. So now those files exist here locally, as you can see. Let me click here to close it. So those files exist here, ABC and gitignore, but do not exist in our remote version of the repository, right? So here we only see readme, no ABC or no abc.rpush or the gitignore file. How we move them there, how do we upload them? Well, with the action push. So you click this push button here, or on the terminal, you would do something like, once it becomes available, you would do something like git push. So that would do the trick. So I'm going to do it now here with the arrow, up arrow. This is moving those files from my local repository to GitHub. If I refresh here, you should see that these two files appear here in a second. There they are. Okay. So we proved that we can communicate between, so we can bring things from GitHub to our computer, and we also proved the opposite. But the way we move things from GitHub to our computer was with the clone action, and now I want to show the same thing, like the download type of action, but now with the Git Pull action. So for that, I'm gonna change one file here. One file that will be easy to change is the README. I can click here on the icon to edit, and maybe add the letter S to make it plural, maybe add a little space, and that will do. So that's a change that this file has. I have been given pre-populated commit message, for example, update README, and that's all I need. So I'm going to hit commit, and now you see that the file changed from demo to demos. But this is only reflected on the remote repository. If I go to my local repository, if you click on that file README, you see that it still is in singular. So why? Okay, because the synchronization between GitHub and your local repository is not automatic. It is something that you have to intentionally do. So the way to do that would be with the pull button. So you could do a git pull, or you can just click here this download or pull button, right? So if I do that, the Git repository that is remote comes locally and updates. So now you see there is a space here, and now you see that there is an S here, right? So we have demonstrated the full communication between your computer and GitHub. First, we cloned the repository. Then we also were able to push changes, and then we were also able to pull changes. So that demonstrates everything that I wanted to show. I think we are done with this video, so see you in the next one.